All right, I think we are all set and ready to start. A warm good afternoon or good morning, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. A warm welcome to the official launch of the Global Action Week for Education 2025 under a very powerful theme: Education Saves Lives, Protect Education in Emergencies. My name is Esther Simon, a member of the GCE board representing youth and students constituency, and I have the absolute honor to be your moderator for this very important and exciting event. Indeed, today we come together at a critical moment, a time when conflict, climate change, and crisis continue to threaten the right to education for millions. Our gathering is not just to mark the beginning of this massive launch of our Global Action Week for Education, but also to amplify our shared commitment to demand action and to forge stronger partnerships, and to also further remind the world that education is not a luxury, but rather it is a life-saving right, especially to go through a very inspiring lineup of leaders, advocates in their own right, champions across regions and different constituencies who will be giving us their insight on board to set the tone for the week and a movement that must resonate beyond today's event. Thank you for being and then the second part is under the theme, or rather just key messages and calls to action from regions and constituencies, which should be moderated by my colleague. And I also have the honor to co-chair who is joining this call. So introduce ourselves. You're open to indicate your name, the organization that you're representing, as well as the country where you are joining us from under the chat, and then we get to network within the chat. Now, what we also need to note is that both the sessions are part 1 and part 2. You are open to engage the panelists. However, we will not be opening the floor to questions, but we'll advise that you drop your questions in the chat box, and all our speakers are also advised to please keep an eye on the chat and be able to respond to all the questions that are addressed to you. Without any further ado, as excited as I am, which I would want to believe everyone else is excited, I want to give firstly the floor to our president, the GCE president, Mr. Rafat, to give us the opening address, but 2025 theme, and give us more insight.
رئيس الفرصة لك. شكرا جزيلا.
I will speak in Arabic, so
باللغة العربية. He will speak in Arabic. Dear colleagues, members of GCE all over the world, we are meeting today with conflicts all over the world. Armed conflicts has been escalating to unprecedented scale ever since 1948. Gaza to Myanmar to Sudan to Syria and DRC. In Gaza alone, the number of total casualties, fatal casualties among students have reached 12,000 students, in addition to 492 workers in the educational field. Around 90%. These figures are not just simple statistics, but rather they stand as a starking witness to the unprecedented violation of human rights and dignity. It is no longer acceptable to accept neutrality in such situations. It's really a crime to take a neutral position in such circumstances. The social contract that holds us together as human beings is disintegrating. We need to voice out the concerns of young people, boys and girls, refugees, the displaced and disabled who are suffering the most. It is a treason to stand by and watch these groups. Civil society organizations should actually leave their positions as listeners and bystanders and start taking the lead as effective and participants in educational policy making and decision taking at all levels, locally, regionally, and internationally. There can be no education without a proper definition of who is the human beings. What's going on right now in our world has exceeded all rational limits in human terms. It's high time that we recover our humanity. This launching of the action of the Global Action Week of Education for 2025 is a clear confirmation of the fact that education is a basic human right. And therefore, we need to provide sustainable and fair funding for education. It's very vital. Actually, it is a token of resilience. We can no longer accept huge funding on political security and arms terms while our children are deprived of the right in education. We do need immediate funding and strong policies for education. We need a strong policy that enhance educational systems. We need to rethink our positions as educators, as investors in education. We need also to mobilize local resources and impose fair taxes, and also to lift all policies that actually suppress education. All funding should actually be directed toward education and toward preserving our human rights in education. Education in emergency and supporting educations in emergencies actually is a must in order to preserve our human dignity, to preserve our morality as human beings. So we cannot wait. Last, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the GCE for organizing this meeting and for launching this Global Action Week of Education. Also, I would like to thank the Board of Directors of the GCE for actually choosing this very important theme for our Action Week for this year 2025. And actually, this very much supports our children in conflict zones and in war zones that are raging right now in the world. The GCE actually should get ready for the coming period, for the future, and try to take positions and to take actions that ensure free education for all our children. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you, all the participants and all members of the GCE. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. We now move over to
شكرا جزيلا
a video message to share light on
شكرا
protecting the right to education during climate crisis and other emergencies. This video message will be presented to us by Ms. Elisa, who is a special rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights during climate change? The team can just put up the video message. Thank you.
The role of education cannot be overstated to protect human rights in the context of climate change. States, educational and research institutions, and non-governmental organizations should all prioritize integrating climate change and human rights education into school curricula, and this curricula should be co-developed with children, employing hope-based education and focusing on resilience and children participation in climate action, in accordance with the general comment on children's human rights in relation to a healthy environment with a focus on climate change of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. In particular, we need to consider that climate literacy is surprisingly low in certain regions, and it's essential to connect education, the right to education, with the right of access to information on climate change and human rights, which was discussed in my report to the UN General Assembly last year in 2024. States must incorporate quality, trustworthy, and evidence-based information on climate change and human rights into educational curricula at all levels, with additional measures to fulfill children's rights of access to information while preventing and responding to eco-anxiety and other mental health impacts of climate change on children. States should also ensure and share accurate, reliable, and age-appropriate information and education that is accessible according to different stages of children's development about the causes of climate change and its effects, about the most effective climate measures, about adaptive responses and relevant legislation, policies, and plans, findings from any environmental impact assessments, strategic environmental assessments, and other human rights assessments that can inform choices about sustainable lifestyles and support the consideration of children's views in the outcomes of climate-related consultations and complaints procedures. Bringing together all this evidence to ensure protection of human rights in the context of climate change should also be supported by states, including through funding, in accordance with data gathering on the impacts of on children's health and development at different ages, with particular attention to children's in vulnerable situation. And once again, ideally, this should be done with children, not only for children. Even when information is available on human rights and climate change, we also need to consider barriers related to lack of connectivity and poverty as child-specific limitations, and also look into gender barriers. States must ensure that women and girls have equal access to information and scientific research and education on climate change and human rights, including about enduring disasters. I look forward to hearing how your conversations went today and staying engaged in advancing this important topic.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for that message. Without any further ado, I'll hand the floor to Dr. Heikun, who is the head of division education at Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany, as well as the ECW representative to share more light on financing in education in emergencies. We know we cannot discuss the right to education without the financing thereof, especially for education in emergencies. The floor is over to you, Dr. Haig.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. Thank you for your warm introduction, and it's great to see you youth taking the lead on this. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here with so many passionate advocates for education all over the world. And from civil society, from governments, multilateral organizations, youth and teacher organizations. And why are we here? We are united by our commitment to the right to quality education. And thank you also, Rifat Sabah, for the opportunity to join this important discussion this week, just starting now, the launch on protecting education in emergencies. And you pointed it out so clearly, we have the highest number of refugees, and we really need to change things. I would like to say some things on Germany's commitment, my country's commitment to education in emergencies. First of all, I'd like to express and laud sincere thanks to Education Cannot Wait. I understand Yasmin Sharif is not with us here, cannot be with us, but she is doing an outstanding leadership, she and her team, in ensuring access to inclusive quality education in protected crisis. And Germany is very proud to be the largest donor to Education Cannot Wait. Why is it so? Because education in emergency is so important, and ECW, this little fund, is fast, flexible, and an effective model, and bridging humanitarian and development support to education. And I'm also the co-chair of ECW's executive committee together with Norway. And this is really good how we work together, all with the same goal. To date, ECW has reached over 11 million children and adolescents. And I would like to refer to the previous speeches. This is not about statistics. Every number is a child. Every number is a child that can learn. This is so important. But we need to do more. According to the ECW Global Estimates Report 2025, there are 234 million crisis-affected children still in need of education support, and 85 million are completely out of school. And this, we don't like it that this is a lost generation, so we have to act together. So conflicts, displacement, and climate change worsen the situation. And others have said it before, it is not just an education crisis, it is a crisis of protection, dignity, and opportunity. And education is life-saving rights, the access to education. And education is also a prerequisite to breaking the cycle of poverty, to better health, a cleaner environment, and to peace. And the Elisa, the special rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights during climate change, has just said it out so very well. So there has to be also the curricula have to be changed. There has to be also education on climate change. And what else? Just some more ideas on things we are looking at from Germany. First of all, gender transformative education is central to our approach. We have a special look on girls. Today, an estimated 122 million girls are out of school, and we know having girls into school has a high return on investment, because they know how to live their lives much better if they are in school, and it's very good for their health and also for their children. I'd like to mention other things. We push also for disability inclusive education. You may have heard just a month ago, we had here in Germany the Global Disability Summit 2025, and there, for instance, also Yasmin Sharif from ECW was there. And we co-hosted this as Germany with Jordan, with the country of Jordan and the International Disability Alliance. And what was the outcome? There is a Berlin Amman Declaration, is a powerful tool and a powerful call that 15% to the 15% of all development financing should go to the 15%, which is the number of persons with disabilities. This is our aim, and this is what we want to reach out. I'd like to say another thing. Teachers are key to learning, and I'm standing here and speaking to you, reaching out to you now, because I'm also a co-chair of the UNESCO's Teacher Task Force together with South Africa, and we are reaching out because we know there's a global shortage of 44 million teachers, but teachers are pivotal to ensuring the continuity and resilience of education in emergency situations. Through ECW and also another big fund, the Global Partnership for Education, we invest in climate resilient education systems, because education is both a victim of climate change, but also a powerful driver of climate action and resilience. Elisa Morguera just pointed this out very clearly. So let me come to the end of my short statement. Education in emergencies is severely underfunded. We have to reach out. We have to reach out not only to those who believe in education, but also reach out to ministers of finance, others who have the money to help in this situation. And we have, until this, we have also to maximize the use of available resources. We have to work together in good cooperation. For instance, these big two funds where Germany is in, and many others more, the Global Partnership of Education and ECW, where they have just made a complementarity note, signed a complementary note to strengthen harmonized programming, because we cannot afford to pay double, or we have to use our funds as effectively as possible. So Germany, my country, remains firmly committed to support education in emergencies. No child should be left behind. And as the name also is of Education Cannot Wait, our fund, Education Cannot Wait for those in a refugee camp or in other dire places. So dear partner governments, dear private sector allies, dear international partners, dear youth, let us continue in this, and of course involving the youth in these endeavors. I'll stop here. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm looking ahead to work closely with you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haidt, for that powerful contribution. Indeed, a call to action and collaboration for all of us, whether private sector, civil society, youth-led organizations, or global movements, a call to action for us to collaborate and to work together to ensure that we do participate, but most importantly, we do come together to advance the cause or the call for access to education for all. It has been amazing, moderating the first part, solely the first part of this launch. And this technically marks the end of the first part of the launch. And now we'll move over to the second part, which is basically now key messages and calls from regions, constituencies, which will be moderated by Cecily and I, to just get different speakers to come on board and then be able to bring their part, whether it's a call to action, share the different work they're doing in the space, and so forth. But beyond that, I would like to remind all of us, if you have any question for the speakers that have spoken in the first part of the launch, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box or rather the Q&A. And then any speaker that has a question addressed to them, please keep an eye on our chat and be able to address or answer the question that has been directed to you. Lovely. We'll continue this conversation. Tia, over to you, and I'll come back after the three speakers.
Thank you so much, Esther, for moderating the first session. And at this point, I would just like to acknowledge our participants, 317 all in all. But of course, 317 includes our dear interpreters. But nevertheless, we are so many gathering here today in GAWE 2025 Global Launch. And warm greetings from the Global Campaign for Education. We can see that members coming from different regions, from the Arab region, from Africa region, from Asia Pacific, and also from Latin America and the Caribbean, and as well as from Europe and North America are here. And also we have members coming from the constituencies of teachers and also youth and students. So thank you so much. And we know that there are many more coming from different sectors. And we are very happy to have you here in this global launch. Now on to our second part of the program. In this part, we will hear about key messages and calls from different regions and constituencies. As we know, GAWE 2025 is not only about our activities and advocacy, but it's also about us who are forwarding the advocacy. And at this point, we would like to listen to a diversity of contexts in education in emergencies and also the diversity of perspectives coming from different regions. But before calling on our members, I would like to acknowledge and give thanks to Dr. Heike Kuhn for reminding us of the big gap in our work, of the tasks ahead that we should do. 234 million children needing support. And this also, if we include the youth and adults who would need support, this would be more than 234. So we have a lot of work to do. And therefore, GAWE 2025 is one of the milestones that we have to continue advocating for education in emergencies. So now I start calling on our colleagues. And in the first three presentations, we will listen to different perspectives on education in emergencies. Education in emergencies within a lifelong learning perspective. So we have with us the youth speaker and also our colleague from the ECCD, Early Childhood Care and Education, and also our colleague from the Adult Learning and Education, talking about lifelong learning within education in emergencies. Colleagues, we all know that education in emergencies is for all, and therefore we would like to listen now to the key messages and also perspectives of education in emergencies within a lifelong learning perspective. So first, let me call our dear board member from the Youth and Students constituency to speak about securing the right to education in emergencies of young people. So over to you, Tamara Ciobano.
Yes, hello everyone.
Tamara?
Hope you hear me well. Can you please confirm?
Yes, very
Great.
clearly.
Yes, dear GC members, friends, and allies, esteemed advocates of the right of education. I'm also very impressed to see how many we're here today. My name is Tamara Ciobanu, and today I'm here on behalf of the Youth and Students constituency, the European Students' Union, and basically all the students and learners around the world. In reality today, I'm proud to say that Estelle and I do not speak just on behalf of a constituency, but in general as part of a generation that refuses to stay silent. I'm happy to see that we gathered here to affirm such a simple yet a very urgent truth: the fact that education truly saves lives. We are here because we believe that education, it is not a privilege, it is a right. And even if for some of us it sounds like a truism, I believe that it still needs to be constantly reaffirmed to make sure that it will be implemented at a point. Because we know that even in the darkest times, in war, in disaster, in displacement, in climate change, education remains the spark that keeps the hope alive in our souls, the student souls. Every day, young people in conflict zones, in the midst of disasters and situations of displacement, face the devastating reality of their right to education being stripped away. In these emergencies, we got to understand that education is more than learning. It is protection, it is hope, it is survival. We meet at a time when conflict and violence have pushed millions of learners out of classrooms. Studies are showing that today more than 222 million children and youth are affected by conflict, displacement, and climate change-induced disasters. Moreover, more than 1 billion children live in countries at extremely high risk from climate change, a crisis that is not just about environment anymore, but more about our future, about the future of education, equality, and again, survival. So this lifeline remains severely underfunded and underprioritized. Moreover, we also have seen data that told us that emergencies deepen existing inequalities, schools damaged or destroyed, girls forced into early marriages, refugees denied a place in classrooms, students with disabilities left behind. So we must say as clearly as possible that denying education during any type of emergency is denying young people their future, is denying our future. When education is denied, an entire generation potential is basically destroyed. So here, on behalf of all learners and victims of education and emergencies, I want to underline the urgent need to protect the right to education, even when a crisis begins. We need to make sure that we uphold humanitarian law, deliver on the SDG promises, specifically on the fourth SDG, because it's the one dedicated to education. Moreover, pay attention to the teachers as well, guarantee fair pay and protection for teachers in crisis areas, and very importantly, equip them to teach resilience, human rights, and peace. We as students, as activists, will not stop until we make sure that every learner everywhere can claim their right to education, even amidst the hardest of times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Youth and students will not stop until each learner has education everywhere and all the time. So thank you so much for that message. And we will always be with young people and activists in this fight for the right to quality public education. And now we will talk about early childhood care and education in emergencies. This is really very important. And sometimes it's neglected when we talk about EIE. But now we have our GCE board member representing the INGOs, and she is also the president of the World Organization for Early Childhood Education, or OMEP, and she will give us key messages and reminders about ECCE in education in emergencies. So over to you, Mercedes Mayol Lasal.
Thank you. Thank you, Thea. It is an honor and a pleasure to join you today to speak about this urgent and often overlooked issue, the importance of protecting early childhood care and education in emergencies. The 2025 Global Action Week of Education reminds us that education saves lives. And when it comes to young children, this truth is even more powerful. Why ECC public policies are important during early years for children and for families also. Early childhood, from birth to age 8, is the most critical period of human development. It shapes a child's intelligence, health, emotions, and learning abilities for life. In emergencies, ECCE provides much more than education. It offers protection, emotional security, stability, and hope. It gives children a safe space to play, to learn, to heal. It supports families, especially mothers and caregivers, with services, psychosocial support, and opportunities to rebuild their lives. When governments invest in ECCE as a public good, they protect children's rights, empower families, and plant seeds for peace, resilience, and social justice. But despite this knowledge, we face enormous structural problems and neglect. In most emergencies, ECCE is absent from planning and funding priorities. We saw it in the COVID period. Early childhood services are often fragmented, underfunded, and treated as optional. There is a severe shortage of trained early educators and caregivers. Children with disabilities, indigenous children, and displaced communities are systematically excluded. And ECC received only a tiny fraction of humanitarian aid for education, far below what is needed. There are no isolated mistakes. They reflect a deep structural neglect, a failure to see young children as right holders, even in the darkest times. And let me be clear, there is not just technical gaps. There are violations of human rights. The Convention of the Rights of the Child clearly states that children have the right to survival, development, education, and protection, even in conflicts or crisis. Article 6 affirms that child right to life and full development, and there are many other like Article 28 and 38 that demand access to education and protection even during armed conflicts, for example. The Safe School Declaration also calls for the protection of education settings, including early learning centers, against attack and misuse. Neglecting ECC in emergency violates these binding commitments. It abandons the youngest, the most vulnerable in the very moment when they need us most. So, what must we do? How can we change this reality? We need a transformative agenda to ECC in emergencies grounded in rights, inclusion, and resilience. First, we need to recognize ECE as essential life-saving intervention. Safe spaces for play, learning, nutrition, and emotional care must be part of every emergency education response. Second, we must embed ECC into crisis-sensitive national education plans and budgets. Third, we must strengthen intersectoral coordination with health, education, nutrition, protection centers in order to collaborate to ensure a holistic support of young children and families. Fourth, we must listen to families, communities, and children themselves. ECC programs must be culturally relevant, inclusive, and built with community participation. Fifth, we need to invest in early childhood educators and caregivers. They need to be protected, to recognize them as frontline defenders of children's rights and well-being. And finally, we must connect ECC with peace building, resilience, and climate action. Our final call is if we fail to protect young children during emergencies, we fail with humanity. But if we act boldly, we can save lives, rebuilding communities, and create the foundation of a better and more peaceful world. And we know that it is possible. All around the world, there are inspiring experiences, good practices, and courageous actions showing that it is possible to do things right for young children. These examples remind us, despite adversity, when there is political will, solidarity, and respect for rights, early childhood care and education can flourish even in emergencies. Education saves lives. Let's protect early childhood care and education in emergencies now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercedes, for informing us on how to make ECCD as mandatory in education in emergencies and also in the right to education. Colleagues, we have listened to ways by which we can advocate for ECCE in Education in Emergencies, and we hope that you are able to translate this cause into your own context. So thank you so much, Mercedes. So from ECCE, we now go to adult learning and education, who are the ones who need to also be at the center of saving lives during education in emergencies. The adults who are also the decision makers, and therefore in any crisis or emergency, and therefore they should be equipped with education and information. To talk about the Asia Pacific adult learning and education in emergencies, we have with us the Executive Council member of the Asia South Pacific Association for Basic and Adult Education, or ASBE. He has a long experience in education advocacy and also long experience in education in emergencies. So colleagues, let us give a warm welcome to Taka Miyake. Over to you, Taka.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Thea. My great pleasure to talk about the AIL acronym for. Can you see my slide?
It's coming. Yes, now we can see it, Taka.
Okay, thanks. My pleasure to talk about AIL acronym for the Adult Learning and Education in EIE. I'm focus on the case after tsunami in Japan. I'm representing Asia South Pacific for basic and adult education aspect, and also Japanese coalition of Global Campaign for Education. This shows Alice seashore before tsunami affected in 2011 March, which killed more than 22,000 people and also destroyed or damaged 1.1 million houses. So this photo shows the same place as I shown the before tsunami photo. So this is right after the quake. People are evacuated in the gymnasium of the school, attached to the school. And today I focus on the AIL, adult learning and education efforts in recovery phase from 2012 to 2016. Organized by my organization called Shanti. We have conducted 3 projects in the field of AIL. One is organized meeting and community reconstruction group. So people get together to talk about the reconstruction plan after tsunami. And they did a mapping exercise to formulate recommendations to local government. Now, one of the plan which was realized is to preserve the damaged school building, which is originally planned to be demolished, dismantled. But people requested the local government to preserve this particular building as a memory, not to forget what happened by the tsunami. The second project is to support those who have to move to relocation site. They have to organize a group and move with the same place. This is a totally devastated area affected by tsunami. So they need to move to the safe place up on the hill. And actually along the seashore, the government constructed the retaining wall, which is over 10 to 15 meters height. So we organize a group meeting and plan for support the relocation of the affected people. The third activity is to reconstruct the community learning center, which was washed away by the tsunami, and organize a planning, mapping, making exercise, and people contributed labor for the reconstruction of the community center. And at the time of the inauguration ceremony, I recall the chairperson of this community learning center said that through the process of reconstruction of the building, community center facility, we also reconstructed the community. I think this shows the critical importance of the adult learning and education. So they use this center as a place for getting together, enjoying themselves, singing, dancing, meeting. So lastly, let me talk about the challenges and lessons learned on AIL in EIE. The first one is same as ECED, AIL is given low priority in emergency. There are 4 countries where the education cluster is activated in Asia and the Pacific region. They are Myanmar, Bangladesh for Rohingya refugees, Pakistan and Afghanistan. But no country education cluster strategy have the AIL component. So this leads to limited funding to AIL by ECW and GPE. On ECE, 80% of funding goes to allocated to primary education. 9% is spent for pre-primary, which is ECCD, and 11% goes to secondary, but no funding to AIL explicitly. And regarding the GPE, GPE did very good job for what is at the time of COVID, the program called COVID-19 Accelerated Program has been implemented, but no AIR program was included in this region, Asia and the Pacific. So lesson is it is critically important to incorporate AIL programs and component in country education cluster strategy. Second thing is community participation. We have to work very rapidly at the time of emergency, and also we need to think about the nexus, triple nexus, humanitarian action, peace building and development. So also we need to think about do no harm principle when we support education emergency program. So from our experience, participatory learning and action or the participatory rapid appraisal tools are useful and effective to promote community participation. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Over to Thea.
Thank you so much, Taka. And colleagues, let us all join ASBE and in the advocacy for including in GPE, more strongly, adult learning and education, or AIL, in education in emergencies, and also in the whole strategy of GPE, so that we know that AIL is really very important, not only in EIE, but also adults have the right to education as well as children and youth. So thank you so much, Taka, for those messages and experiences from Japan in terms of the importance of AIL in EIE. So now I'm going to give back the moderation to my colleague Esther. But before that, let me just read one message, colleagues. I would like to invite you to look at the chat and read the messages coming from the different regions. And let me read one and from Ngala Nadege. And the message says that during war or crisis, young girls are raped, forced in early marriages and early pregnancies. Those who get pregnant and wish to continue their education are not given admission into schools or are forced to drop out of school. How then can we bridge the gap that exists in education? So this is one message, and I would like to remind colleagues and participants to please write your questions and in the Q&A, and also you can put them in the chat. Thank you for all who are writing in the chat. So over to you, Esther, for the next three speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tia. Perhaps just to continue on to that, in as much as we are writing our questions, just to again aid and remind our speakers to also be checking the chat and be able to, pick and point those questions that are addressed to you, and if possible, kindly respond to those questions on the Q&A and in the chat. And just to read another comment, to build on to the trend set by Tia, from Hannah, she indicates that we have to take practical steps to protect children or to protect education in Gaza and West Bank. While this meeting, we have 10 to 20 children. While in this meeting, we have 10 to 20 children have been killed by Israel occupation. So please, let's do anything to protect education, which children are the main component of it. Don't forget, children in Gaza is under genocide. Also, another call to action and clarion call. Let's keep those comments coming in. And also, there are speakers who have the ability to pinpoint questions addressed to them to please respond to the question. Now, moving on, the next lineup of the three speakers that we have. One will be looking at the agent actions in education and emergency in Africa. The second speaker thereafter will be looking at a topic or a theme on enforcing humanitarian laws during emergencies in education and emergency in the Arab region. And the third speaker will reflect on Latin America and the Caribbean, gender transformative education in emergencies. I'll call on Paul Ginalo, who is the chairperson, the GCE board chairperson, as well as the president for the African Campaign Network for Education for All Africa, and SEFA, to share light on the agent actions required with regards to education emergencies in the African region. The floor is yours, Paul.
Merci, Simone.
Thank you very much, Esther.
Bonjour ou bonsoir à toutes et à tous.
Greetings to all.
Monsieur le Président de la campagne mondiale pour l'éducation,
Dear President of the Global Campaign for Education, and dear Global Coordinator, representatives of regions and national coalitions, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I take the floor on behalf of ANCEFA to show the key messages for Africa in this GAWE 2025 under the theme Education in Emergency. Ladies and gentlemen, GAWE 2025 is celebrated at a time when many countries on the continent are facing a crisis like Sudan, the DRC, Ethiopia. They have many targeted attacks against education in some countries facing terrorism like Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria, and Cameroon. Emergency situation linked to conflict and climate is causing refugee situations. We saw many in Southern Africa, like Madagascar, that were destroyed by cyclones with more droughts, more floods. And this is caused by climate change. And every year, it's affecting many learners. According to Education Cannot Wait, climate emergencies is causing disturbance to learning to 40 million people. So we had a huge humanitarian crisis caused by COVID, with millions needing humanitarian aid, including 16 million children. And many are struggling to reopen schools across the countries. You have more than 16 million school children not going to school. And these long-standing crises are not benefiting from the attention it deserves. With repeated violations like civil and sexual violations, the use of rape as a weapon of war, and also targeted attacks against schools. With the conflict that is in the east of the DRC with the M23 rebels progressing, this is causing many schools to close, and with some school premises that are used by refugees on the one side and also by armed groups.
En raison de l'escalade du conflit,
With this conflict escalating, we had close to 500,000 children who are prevented from going to school and from accessing school. Many are enrolled by force to armed groups. Many are experiencing trauma caused by all these actions by armed groups. So in 2025, we estimated 365 million people will need urgent humanitarian protection because of a number of crises with a lot of damage for the victims. In Southern Africa and also the Eastern Africa region have about 85 million people affected. In Sudan, it's 35% of the total number of people affected. You know, the Sudan crisis is increasing the need for funding in East and Southern Africa, where we need more than 12 billion USDs for support, while elsewhere we also need some support. So call for action. With the emergencies and the attacks against the education, we are calling on the AU and the international community to protect in all circumstances, in times of peace and of war, to uphold the right to education for all by increasing the resilience and also protecting the teachers and the learners. And we also need to make sure that education continues for all girls and boys that are affected, especially those from most vulnerable communities, the people with disability and girls. So we need to protect women against gender-based violence, especially in emergency situations, and to make sure that all crimes are punished. We need to promote psychosocial support, and we also need the transformative, educative approaches. And we need to develop strategies and responses to climate emergencies. We need to include the refugees and internally displaced people in national plans. And we need to protect the learners, the teachers, and also the education community against all attacks by implementing the Declaration of Safety in School Learning Environments, where all can have learning in place. We need to mobilize national resources in order to improve the infrastructure by including education to environment in the national budget. We also need to guarantee training for teachers who are operating in conflict-affected areas. We also need to close the gaps in terms of funding by increasing the help to development and support multilateral mechanisms like GPE and ECW. The right to education needs to be upheld in all times and everywhere across the African continent by making sure no one is left behind. These are the key messages by Ansefatu the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I quote that at the end of the fight is for us to ensure that we leave no one behind. Thank you very much for also that call to action for collaboration and calling all key stakeholders to come on board and play their part. Just heading back to our chat, I see we have a number of comments, a number of questions, and also those who are appealing to you to contribute to protect education in Yemen. There are 4.5 million Yemen children out of school, and many other statistics being shared by different audiences on the group. I've also realized that some are also dropping links to different materials. Let us keep an eye on our Q&A as well as our chat. Now, before I invite the next speaker, I want to emphasize that protecting the right to education during emergencies is not just about providing access. It also is about upholding international humanitarian law. And in times of crisis, school must be a safe space always, and not targets and learners' rights must be defended at every given hour, at every given time. It is in that spirit that I would like to call on Mustafa, from the Arab Campaign for Education, to share light on enforcing humanitarian laws during emergencies and in education in emergency in the Arab region. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And I would like to start by saying that probably there is no place in the world where education is so badly affected like in Palestine. What we have here is a situation where every student, whether it's a school student or a university student, in Gaza is not allowed to have education for 18 months now. Big part of our students in the West Bank as well are also unable to get education because of Israeli measures and because of the more than 1,000 military checkpoints that are preventing us from movement in the West Bank. But the most dramatic thing is what's happening besides what's happening in Yemen, where the people are affected by the American bombardment and Israeli bombardment. The most disastrous situation is in Gaza, where we can see that in Gaza, we have now, up till now, 61,000 people killed by Israeli bombardment, including 18,000 children. And that also includes 13,000 students who were killed by Israeli bombardment up till now in Gaza. 800 teachers were also killed. 150 professors and major educators in universities were also killed. All universities were smashed to the ground in Gaza by Israeli bombardment. Most schools were already bombarded or they are not in a condition to be working. Practically, we are talking about 3 war crimes that are committed in Gaza today, including genocide, which has taken away the lives, as I said, of 61,000 people and injured more than 116,000 people. Most of them are children and women. Including throwing no less than 100,000 tons of explosives on the small sector of Gaza, where 2.1 million people live. 100,000 tons of explosives is equal to no less than 5 nuclear bombs, like the ones that were thrown on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's about 50 kilograms of explosives for each man, woman, and child in Gaza. And the total amount of people injured and killed is more than 10% of the population. This is such a huge number. If you apply the same proportion to the United States of America, for instance, you would be talking about 33 million people killed or injured within the course of 18 months. The number of Palestinians killed by Israel during the last 18 months is more than all Americans killed in all American wars since independence in the 17th century. This tells you how huge the scope is. But it's not just about bombardment. It's also about a second world crime, which is collective punishment and starvation. At this moment, Gaza Strip has been subjected to total siege since 57 years, where not a single piece of bread or a glass of water or pills of medications are allowed into Gaza. This is creating starvation. People in Gaza, including all students and all teachers, are subjected now to starvation in front of the whole world. And not only that, this siege is creating practically a biological warfare, because when people don't have clean water to drink, when they don't have food to support their immunity, diseases are spreading. We have counted 112,000 cases of infectious hepatitis so far, in addition to other diseases. But the most dangerous thing, which worries me so much as a medical doctor, is what will happen to our children, our students, without vaccination. Because Israel is also preventing the supply of vaccination to Gaza. This could lead to an outbreak of poliomyelitis, tetanus, typhoid, measles, and other epidemics. We already had many cases of meningitis as well. So it's a total disaster. And add to the biological effect of the warfare, you should also add the chemical effect, because these explosives include depleted uranium and many other chemicals that could affect life for years to come. It's a very difficult situation. And what worries us so much as Palestinians is this big question. Why Israel, out of all countries in the world, is allowed to be above the law and above international law? Why Israel can enjoy this impunity in front of international law? And where is international law? I speak to you, and I know that some of our colleagues who are participating are also from European and Western countries. We've been taught by our colleagues in different countries about the values of human rights, international law, international humanitarian law, as well as democratic rules. Where are they? Why they are not applied to Palestine? Why there is this level of silence about Israeli war crimes, even when the International Criminal Court decides that Netanyahu should be brought to the court and judged for the war crimes he has committed, in addition to his defense minister? Why Israel is allowed to continue to violate the International Court of Justice law resolutions that say that occupation is illegal and unacceptable and should be removed, and that any country in the world has the obligation to support the end of occupation and the end of this suppression that Palestinians are subjected to? Why 1,000 resolutions of the United Nations by the General Assembly, including 85 resolutions by the Security Council of the UN, are not implemented? And still Israel is allowed to continue to receive weapons and continue to bombard us. In my opinion, today the place in the world that requires your solidarity and your intervention immediately is Palestine. It is the place where the whole future of international law will be judged. The whole future of intervention regarding these violations will be judged by the peoples of the world. Because if this crime continues without punishing Israel, then the world will come to the conclusion that we don't live by international law, but by the law of jungle. We demand that sanctions are imposed on these criminals who are committing these crimes. We ask for your solidarity and for your support. And what should happen is exactly what happened in the case of South Africa. In South Africa, there was an apartheid system, and the world imposed sanctions on the regime of South Africa till apartheid went away. Now, what we have in Palestine is not only apartheid. As a matter of fact, a much worse apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa at one point of time. That's what our South African friends tell us. We have not only apartheid, illegal occupation, oppression, and 3 war crimes that are committed in parallel. That's why sanctions have to be imposed on Israel, because that's the only way to force Israel to stop and to stop this atrocity. This is the only way we can get our education back. This is the only way we can have our children go to schools. This is the only way we can rebuild our schools that the Israeli planes have destroyed already. It's a very crucial time, and we ask for your solidarity and for your intervention with us, with Yemen, with Lebanon, with Syria, with all the countries that are subjected to this terrible atrocity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa. Well noted on the demands on sanction, solidarity, and support in our collective intervention. We've heard you, and I'm sure everyone that has joined this launch has heard your plea to action. Thank you very much for that intervention. Moving on, would like to then give the floor to Ms. Laura, who's the program coordinator in Latin American campaign for the Right to Education, CLADE, to give us a reflective on Latin America and the Caribbean, gender transformative education in emergencies. The floor is over to you, Ms. Laura.
Good morning, everyone, and I will speak in Spanish. So, buenos días a todos y todas.
Good morning to all. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this new edition of the GAWE. For CLADE, it's a great joy to be able to participate in this session for the right of education in the world. Now we're addressing the subject of education in emergency crisis. And first, I would like to show our solidarity as a region to all the people in the world that have been affected by this context. I have to think about the impacts of the emergency situations for gender equality, which is not a minor challenge, since there is no country in the world where the gender equity can be achieved. In Latin America, the colonial experience, racism, patriarchism, plus the capitalism have actually created breaches and inequalities in our context. There is economical crisis, drug trafficking, and this is getting worse, especially in poor areas. Due to the patriarchy, these situations, they have a concerning effect in girls, in women, in trans women, and non-binary people. From an intersectional impact, we see that there is more also the people, indigenous people, disabled people are being greatly affected, where the rights are being, they're not giving the rights that they need. And based on the United Nations, the displacement, the climate crisis, the economical inequality intensify the social stress and economical stress in the whole world, especially in our region. It increments the violence against women and girls, especially indigenous women and also elderly women that belong to the LGBTQI community. Then this document states that 1 degree Celsius of the temperature, global temperature, are related to an increase of 4.6% of the violence in partners, in couples, and the heat waves increased feminicide by 28%. It also talks about other consequences of this phenomenon, like, for example, early marriage, sexual exploitation, especially after the displacement caused by floods and also desertification.
Ou transformadas em abrigos,
or transform in
oportunidades de aprendizagem
shelters, which has an impact on the opportunities of learning for the women and girls by putting in danger their professional future and increasing the load of domestic work and care, which continues reproducing the gender gaps. So for this is to adopt a transformative gender education, which can question the patriarchal system, combat the racism and sexism, and all forms of violence and discrimination in a way that we can build more just societies. Also, education must be adapted to all contexts in an intersectionality, intercultural context. Education cannot resolve all the social problems and inequalities, but if we do not have an education model and worry about the gender equality, we will not be able to overcome the development that is egocentric and is based on the exploitation of the environment and on the body and the women by valuing remunerated work and by hiding the non-remunerated work, which are key for the defects of the environmental degradation. The permanent violation of the human rights at all levels and educational modalities, which increases the power inequalities. We have new development models that recognize the activities, essential activities to sustain life by putting human dignity and the care of the planet and the people and as the well-being of in the center. And this way is key for the states to provide sufficient resources to implement policies and programs to promote education, gender, integral sexual education, and mechanisms to do a follow-up of discrimination and violation of gender inequalities. These efforts must be articulated with other social rights as health, care, social care, food, etc. It's important to train the educational authorities on transformative gender education and to conquer the families and political authorities to go against the ultra-conservative education. Finally, we have to facilitate the participation of the communities that face to social inequalities and gender inequalities in a way that we can have a protection, the education that protects their rights and that train people able to build a more just world in terms of economic and social and environmental issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Laura, for that presentation. I'll now hand back to my colleague, Tia, to continue.
Thank you so much to that panel. And as we go through our discussions and going deeper into the situations and contexts of education and emergencies, we also feel it's not only education that we have as a problem, but also the protection of lives, the protection of human rights. And colleagues, you can see from the chat how many people are suffering, how many schools are destroyed. And therefore, this will require advocacy, strong advocacy, but also political will from ourselves as a political movement. And we are faced with several challenges. And in the end, how do we as a movement persist in our advocacy and also build those linkages to make sure that education is protected during crises and emergencies, and that lives are protected and dignity is protected as well during this crisis and emergencies. I can see from the chat there is a question there from the Philippines saying that we are very huge, and we can see that there are so many of us here in the forum. But how come we still have, in a sense, failed, to move our governments, to move the duty bearers, and in our advocacy and our work? And this is something that we have to confront in our different contexts. And also, I think it is only us who can also respond to this very difficult question. So, colleagues, so now we go to the discussions on funding. And we have two speakers from our membership who are going to look at funding. Remember from Dr. Kuhn, she mentioned that there are several efforts addressing and pushing for filling in the gaps in terms of putting in funds for education in emergencies. And colleagues, as we know, education in emergencies is a global concern. So many of the countries are very fragile, and they themselves could not produce the resources needed for education and for protecting lives. And therefore, financing education in emergencies is very important, not only at the country level. Of course, the mobilizing domestic resources is very important. And we also do budget advocacy on education, securing budgets for education in emergencies. But it is very important to also do this at the global level. So at this point, we have two speakers. And one of our speakers is going to talk about the campaign for official development assistance for education in emergencies. And one from the perspective of teachers, the advocacy for the Global Fund for teacher salaries in crisis-affected regions. And I read in the chat there is a comment saying that teachers need support during emergencies, especially since they do not receive salaries during emergencies and crises. Okay, so now let's focus on funding EIE. And for our first speaker, he is also a GCE board member. He represents Europe and North America constituency in the GCE board. So without further ado, I would like to call our dear board member, Crispin Williams, to share with us his presentation. Over to you, Crispin.
Thank you so much there, and welcome everyone to the launch today. Just to thank all the previous speakers, and just to reiterate my honor of representing the European and North American Campaign for Education as the co-chair and sitting on the board of Global Campaign for Education. As they alluded to, I'm going to talk around our sort of campaign around overseas development aid in relation to education and emergencies, giving a bit of background on the landscape, how that's been changing, how ENACE, the acronym for the European and North American Campaign for Education, is responding, and some of the things that we've been looking to do, including in this GAWE week with our regional event that we have. So, as many of the previous speakers have spoken about, this last year has seen difficult challenges to the aid, humanitarian, and EIE landscape. Policy and fundraising challenges have led to existential questions to our sector and organizations, including directly to ENACE members, some of which are fighting to survive with cuts that have come. Many of these challenges come from within ENACE countries. The chaotic dismantling of USAID by the Trump administration, removing not only the largest donor, but also huge expertise and coordinating capacity in the sector, down from over 10,000 staff to 15 to essentially nothing. Many European countries have also cut ODA budgets, such as the United Kingdom, down from 0.5% of its budget to 0.3% by 2027 to fund increased defense spending, and the Netherlands with cuts of 70% to its CSO budget, its civil society organization budgets, with a focus on Dutch interests, including areas like trade. These are some of the new areas that are being put forward instead of traditional aid areas as needing focus. Cutting of ODA budgets has led to a new, leaner humanitarian focus in many countries, therefore, with more acute aid now being prioritized for immediate response to emergencies and conflicts and crises. EI funds are protected from cuts as part of this new leaner humanitarian focus by some governments, for example Switzerland, but for many others the future of EIE remains uncertain. And this is the new landscape that's facing ODA and EIE in the ENACE area, and that is going to be our focus on fundraising to get more focus on EIE. Over the next few years, it will also be the global landscape, though, sadly, as many of these countries are the donor countries that fund the likes of Education Cannot Wait and the Global Partnership for Education mentioned earlier, and whose funds also filter down to projects in many countries around the world. So the cuts and the policy impacts will hit home everywhere. So this is the background that faces ENACE in its campaign to raise the importance of ODA and EIE. As an immediate thing to start to rectify this situation, we have revamped ENACE's structure in 2025 to work in a more unified and coordinated approach towards advocacy and funding opportunities. And this will be crucial to better make the case for ODA and EIE and to get the most out of the funds that are remaining for ENACE members and all civil society organizations. As part of our campaign, and given that we're kicking off GAWE Week, we have held our own regional GAWE EIE webinar event last Thursday, titled, as we have taken the global slogan, Education Saves Lives, Protect Education in Emergencies. We had around 100 participants attending, and headline guests that included Yasmin Sharif, the Executive Director of Education Cannot Wait, and Faiza Hassan, the Director of the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, INEE, that cover both the standards and the funding side in relation to education in emergencies, as well as a youth representative, Farida. The event explored the current changes in the EIE landscape before looking at what we can do together as civil society, including with partners like ECW and INEE. Following guest speeches, we had a number of breakout sessions covering all aspects of boosting and protecting EIE, from localization to what makes education life-saving. This is seen as very important in making a renewed case of the importance for education in emergencies, to ideas or messages for resource mobilization, both within national context and also internationally. The outcomes from these discussions in the event will be shared, and we'll be happy to share them with all of our friends across the GCE world, and used to inform ENACE's campaign moving forward on education and emergencies. I just want to say the event was a huge success, and I'm sorry, I'm going to quickly plug the people who did it. I'd like to thank Emma from the UK Coalition, Beatrice, Nadine and Odile from the Swiss Coalition, Marilu from the Spanish Coalition, and Leah from the French Coalition, who were responsible for the event. And I think in naming those names, but also the coalitions that have worked together, it gives you an idea of how we must cooperate across national boundaries to make the case for EIE. Our members will be holding further national GAWE events focusing on EIE throughout the week, talking on EIE issues ranging from conflicts, climate change to refugee impacts, all linked back to how we are going to raise the importance to get more political focus and attention, but crucially more funding attention as we move forward. As ENACE, we are keen to push more for the growing importance of EIE and its funding, and we have a simple call for action. Please stand with us. We welcome engagement with any other partners from the GCE family who would like to work more closely with us on promoting and protecting EIE for all, especially the important need to get more funding for this crucial area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Crispin. And indeed, it was a very successful webinar that NA's conducted last Thursday. Thank you so much. And NA's work is very important. As we know, education in emergencies and advocacy for ODA, for EIE, is a strategic advocacy of GCE and, of course, NA's membership. And therefore, we will strive to do our best and continue working more strongly on this, considering that the futures of education is already saying that crisis and emergencies will be definitely part of the future. And there's no way, that we can evade crisis and emergencies considering the geopolitical and also the climate crisis that we now face. And therefore, education in emergencies shouldn't be a band-aid solution, but it should be part of the strategic solution and integrated in the education sector planning and also in the education humanitarian work of different organizations and multilateral organizations. So thank you so much for that presentation. And now we go to a discussion on the Global Fund for Teacher Salaries in Crisis-Affected Regions. And we have with us also a GCE board member representing the teaching profession. She is also the Director of Research, Policy, and Advocacy of Education International. So over to you, Antonia Wolf.
Thank you so much, Thea, and a warm hello to you all. Happy Global Action Week. I think it's important to remember that even if these are really difficult times, this is such an important moment for us to come together. And it's been wonderful to hear from all of you, and it's been wonderful to see so many contributions in the chat as well. So Education International is, of course, the global federation of teacher unions. We represent about 33 million teachers from 180 countries. That's teachers from early childhood through to higher education. And we've always argued that as part of the right to education, we need to be able to ensure that every child has a trained and qualified teacher, regardless of where this child lives, what his or her, well, maybe her, it is often a girl, isn't it? Regardless of her personal characteristics, every child needs to have a trained and qualified teacher. This is far from the case today. We've heard about the more than 200 million children that still remain out of school. But what we've been working on a lot over the past couple of years is the millions of teachers that we are missing at the moment. The millions of teachers that choose to leave the profession because of the impossible conditions of work that they are faced with. And as part of this, we've of course also zoomed in on all of the teachers that work in different crisis and emergency settings. The UN high-level panel on the teaching profession that was convened 2 years ago to look at the teacher shortage and make recommendations as to how to address the shortage also highlighted the particular hardships faced by teachers in different emergency settings and was very clear in its call for targeted support for these teachers, ensuring their rights, ensuring their working conditions, investing in their well-being. They also highlighted the specific issue of salaries and the difficulties of ensuring that teachers are paid and paid regularly when working in emergency settings. And we've done some research over the past year looking specifically at the situation for teachers in Lebanon, and I saw Elsie shared some information from the Lebanese context in the chat, so scroll back and have a look at that if you didn't see it already. Lebanon, Palestine, I saw there were some testimonies from teachers living in Palestine as well, and South Sudan. I didn't see testimonies from South Sudan yet, so I thought I'd highlight an example from South Sudan. So 21 years of experience teaching, never a single salary increase, never a promotion of any kind, a monthly pay of just under $14, which is sometimes received with an 11-month delay. So imagine having to wait for your salary for 11 months without any security whatsoever that you'll receive it. These are situations that makes it impossible to survive on a teacher's salary. It makes it impossible to have a family. And it explains why so many teachers are forced to seek another job alongside their teaching job just to be able to make ends meet at the end of the month. So looking at the South Sudanese context, this is a particularly difficult context, I think. Here we have monthly salaries ranging from $3, yes, you did hear that right, $3 a month to 58, so $58 a month is the maximum, and a situation where 70% of the teachers are not on the government payroll. So the question is then, who is in charge of paying the salaries of 70% of the workforce if they are not on the government payroll? And I think there's something to be said, and Crispin spoke really well to this, there's something to be said about the broader education landscape and the rather impossible situation that so many governments in a way find themselves in, and particularly in the global south, where budgets have been cut, but there are also budget shortfalls due to debt servicing, to aid cuts, to austerity measures and public sector wage bill constraints having been imposed on them. And in some cases, also needs to be acknowledged, simply inadequate structures, a limited technical capacity, an outdated system for payrolls, which makes it harder to ensure continuity, and particularly if things get difficult. So what the UN High-Level Panel called for was the establishment of a new global fund that would be dedicated to teachers in emergencies. So this would be a fund that would really have as its task to ensure that all those students living in different emergency settings would have access to a teacher, and that all those teachers who are working in those settings would have their basic rights guaranteed and their monthly salary paid. And here it's maybe important to point out that many donors are traditionally reluctant to take on the costs of paying salaries because it's understood as a recurrent cost that a government should be able to do themselves. It's not seen as an emergency response as such. So one of the first tasks for this fund would, of course, be to work out the how, solve the many question marks around how you would practically make this happen. And of course, in this current context, a big question around who could be the government champions that would really go in and support such a new fund and actually pledge to support it financially as well. But this is one of Education International's main demands as part of this year's Global Action Week, the establishment of a global fund for teachers in emergencies, really also knowing that when disaster strikes, for children to have access to their school, to continue going to school, continue seeing their teacher, their classmates, is really such a cornerstone of their well-being. So looking forward to comments and reactions from all of you on this. I imagine this is a new idea for many of you. So thanking you in advance for some good questions and ideas as to how we get this happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Antonia. How does it materialize? What can we do to advocate? At the same time, can we also advocate this at a country level? So, for example, if we're working for a global fund for teachers' salaries at a global level, so how about at the country level? Because as we know, teachers are at the forefront of any crisis and emergency, and they are really, sometimes they are pushed to do that responsibility, but without protection, without salaries, it will be very difficult for teachers to perform their responsibility as much as they want to, but teachers also need protection and also support during crises and emergencies. And this is a reality that without teachers, education in emergencies would not have quality education. Thank you so much, Antonia. And colleagues, please write your questions and comments in the chat and also in the Q&A. And while you are also writing that, I would like also panelists who are, because there's a question and comment from Denise in French, if that is possible to respond to that. And also there are some in the chat which may need some responses from the panelists. So thank you so much. Okay, so I see there are many also comments in the chat. So colleagues, thank you for being very participative and interactive. And now I'm going to ask colleagues, we are now down to 250 plus, minus the interpreters, of course. We are now total 289, but there's a lot of us still. So my colleague Salma just posted on the chat the survey feedback form. So there are links to the survey, and the survey is available in English, Arabic, Spanish, French, Portuguese. And I would like to invite participants to please respond to the survey. This survey is very important because this will help GCE improve the webinars, and also this can also help us prepare very important webinars and discussion for GCE members. So colleagues, let's give ourselves 2 minutes to respond to this survey. And while we are responding to this survey, I would like to thank GCE members who have forwarded to us videos and pictures. Already, many of you have already launched GAWE 2023 in your respective countries. So thank you to the National Campaign for Education Nepal, which shared with us the photos. And I hope my colleague Salma will be able to share the photos from Nepal. We also received the video from Madagascar, Konamet. Denise Candodo is here. Thank you so much, Denise, for the video that you have shared with us. Okay, so I'm just advertising all of these events in GAWE 2023 as you respond to the survey. Colleagues, please respond to the survey. This will be very helpful for GCE. And any of you who would like to share your pictures and also your videos, please share with us in the link that we have given in the email sent by Grant. You can find the link where you can share your respective celebration and also events that you have so far organized for GAWE 2023. Okay, let's, okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we're just showing this while you are responding to the feedback because this is really very important for us. Okay, so these are pictures from Nepal. Thank you so much, Ram Gaire and NCA Nepal. I'm sure you have several pictures from your different countries as well. So please share them with us. Okay, so I hope you were able to send the survey form. Please send them. And now I can see many thank yous from participants. This is really indeed a very heartwarming and also very urgent work that we are doing. And now to close this session, and GAWE 2025 launch, I would like to call our global coordinator, Grant Kasuanjete, over to you for the closing remarks and the call to action. Over to you, Grant.
Okay, thank you so much, Tia. And it's really exciting, to be part of this important discussion. First, let me thank all the speakers. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We are really greatly honored that, you were able to join us in this important moment as we are launching our Global Action Week for Education 2025. And thank you also to the board of GCE, many of you who you spoke. Thank you so much for really, not necessarily just engaging on this platform, but also engaging with your own constituencies. This year, we really made a commitment that we wanted all GCE constituencies to be active in this GAWE. And we really are expecting results and pictures and photos. Please share everything else with us, so that, we can really create an archive of all these things to really demonstrate the breadth and the strength of the GCE movement. And, we cannot do all these things without our funding partners, those that are really providing resources for us to be able to do so. So we say thank you very much to GPE, Oxfam IBIS, and many others that are really supporting us to do this. Having said all of that, I think we have all heard different issues and stories and statistics and difficulties, challenges that exist. I will not necessarily go into all those, but more now it is unto us now as advocates, as coalition members, as members of the GCE movement now to go out there. COVID is no longer there, so we can take our placards. I woke up with so much joy today when I saw, the pictures from NEC in Nepal, when they were marching into the street demanding that their government should actually take action on education in emergencies. It is very important that we take this moment, we take this time to really bring together our members in our own coalitions, in our own membership, so that we can all engage together. We can all strive together so that we can really bring up to light the issues around education in emergencies. It is true that there is no funding. It is true that there is so much abuse of human rights, but it is up to us as advocates to take all that up to different platforms within our engaging structures. We cannot necessarily just end our GAWE without engaging with policymakers. We need to ensure that we reach up to the highest level within our different structure, within our countries, so that we can really bring the issue up into all the spaces that are necessary and needed. We have all the data. We have all the publications. We have all the policy positions. It's up to time now that we take these things and we take them up to those that matters most. And the most important part of all of this is this, that we can't carry this war, we can't carry this process alone. We need to ensure that citizens are part of us. We cannot ignore that part. We need to ensure that we rally around, everyone. Let's use this Global Action Week as a moment to mobilize, as a moment to bring everyone together so that we can drive home the issue that education in emergencies is very important. I listened with keen interest to the issues that Mercedes was sharing. It is indeed true that you don't find early childhood education in humanitarian crises, but it is up to us now. We know the issues. We will ask Mercedes to share with us some publications that are there that we can use in our advocacy. The issue around teachers that Antonia shared, that we need to push for funds that should be available to support education, to support teachers who are in crisis measures. We know that in Yemen, teachers are not getting anything. We know, and it is in many countries. It is up to us now to raise that standard, to raise that issue and say something has to be done. And when we are talking about funding for EIE, it's not only from ODA. We also have to push our local governments to provide the resources for this. So let's address all these issues in all angles. But it is really great to see many of you, youth, teachers, the INGOs, all the constituents of GCE coming together and all of us looking and agreeing that something has to be done. I think this is the most encouraging moment, and let's carry the day, let's carry this week, let's carry this month, let's carry this year, so that education in emergencies becomes a cornerstone of all the discussion that is happening. GCE is the largest social movement in the world, and we can achieve more if we can address all the issues. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, and over to you, Thea.
Well, I think we have come to the end, and thank you, Grant, for your closing. Thank you, Esther, my partner in this webinar. So, shall I say good night in the Philippines? So, and happy GAWE 2025. Although, of course, the issues that we are raising are really very urgent, and also it stabs you in the heart. Actually, you want to cry, but we know that we have to continue fighting. We have to continue working together. So, colleagues, happy GAWE 2025. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Merci.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.